right, ladies and gents, welcome back, and sadly this is the conclusion to the Muscle and Strength Nutritional Pyramid. So recap, for those of you who have been out of here for a while or coming here for the first time, this is the 6th video in a 6-part series on the nutritional pyramid, which is levels 1 through 5, and then the level we're going to talk about today, which is the overarching theme of behavior and lifestyle. So we had energy balance being the most important level, moving on downwards of importance through macronutrition, micronutrition, nutrient timing, and supplements. Today we're going to be talking about the thing that can affect all levels, and I honestly think is probably more important than all these levels as far as its practical significance and your ability to actually implement these levels and get to your goals. This is going to be a little more of a broad topic and less definitive and quantitative than the other ones, but I can't express how important this is, because you can have a lot of theory and a lot of knowledge and still never get to where you want to go if you don't know how to apply it consistently and how to make it a part of your lifestyle and behavior. So, without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go over a number of things of how you're going to implement these different levels. We're going to talk about the tools you'll want to actually make sure that you're meeting the requirements of these levels. We're going to talk about some of the mindsets that might be involved when you get really focused on your nutritional goals, to include all or nothing thinking and the mindset of seeing foods as good or bad and what that might mean, and we'll have a bit of a conversation about that. And then we're also going to talk about accuracy, flexibility, and consistency, and balancing those qualities, which is going to be huge as far as your results. And we're going to talk about support, which is extremely important, as it's difficult to have a long-term goal without enlisting the aid of your fellow humans. And finally, we're going to talk about helping others, because the more savvy you get and the more successful you are, other people are going to look to you for guidance, and how to do that in an effective way. And then also, even though I said I wasn't going to talk about it when we were talking about macronutrition, we're going to talk about alcohol, just because it is a big part of many people's lives, and it certainly can be worked into a program and deserves some talking about, if briefly. So, first off, we have the tools we will need to make sure we're meeting our goals here. So first step would be our scales. We're going to want to have a way of tracking our body weight and then also our food. So we want scales, a digital scale for our food, a digital scale for our body. It doesn't have to be digital, but you don't want one of those big clunky scales at home. Digital scales can come very cheap. You can find them at $10 and $10 to $20 to $30 in most stores in the U.S. or online. You just want to make sure that the batteries don't run out and that it's digital, not one of the ones that is loaded with a little rubber band and can be totally off very easily. So you're going to be wanting to weigh your food, because in some cases, we'll talk about when to use it, because volume can be very inaccurate. I think someone had talked about how, my recommendations of cups for fruits and veggies was a pretty poor way to track things, and I would actually agree. You can actually use the servings for that if you wanted. But anyway, like for example, a cup is a measure of volume, but a cup of water and a cup of something solid and how it's chopped up or cut up can mean very different things. So when you look at a food label and it says 100 grams of it is this, you can weigh it out in grams, which is what I would recommend for accuracy. Next thing you want is some way of tracking. This could be a spreadsheet, a piece of paper and a pen, and you're just writing down what you have, or it can be integrated into a food database like myfitnesspal.com, livestrong.com, fitday.com. These are all options. My Macros is a good one, I think. And these can be, most of the time, also put on a smartphone, so you can take it with you while you're traveling, going out to eat, going to a grocery store, or just outside of your normal element. And they can be also on your computer. So basically, a couple things we're going to be wanting to track on our spreadsheet are our macros, foods, calories, and then also our weigh-ins, which we're going to talk about and how to do that. So those are the tools we're going to need. When we get to here, we're going to talk about how we're going to implement them. So let's talk about how we're going to implement them. So first off, accuracy, flexibility, and consistency. It's really about balancing these different qualities, because if you get really too focused and super accurate, you're going to lose some of your flexibility, you're going to lose your sanity, and you're going to make the diet very difficult to follow. Remember that we have a limited adaptive capacity, and that includes willpower and just our how much energy we have from our mind. And you can't expect to chase down every grain of rice that falls off the scale every time, 3 to 5 times a day when you eat and hit your macros on dead, exactly perfectly accurate, and expect that to be a sustainable plan, because that will stress you out eventually. Or what will stress you out is when you can't do it, and then you're not very flexible, are you? So what we want to make sure we have is a balance of these things. We want to be as accurate as we need to be consistent so that we can get to our goals. And different goals are going to require different levels of accuracy. For example, a bodybuilder who is in the final stages of prep trying to get shredded glutes is going to need more accuracy than someone who has an undetermined time limit to lose 100 pounds. Okay? Likewise, a bodybuilder in the off-season trying to put on muscle mass is going to have different requirements than him during his bodybuilding contest prep, and even different than someone who's trying to get lean but isn't a bodybuilder necessarily and is just doing a cut. Okay? So, we want to talk about different ways to approach this. The more accurate you are, perhaps the more stress you'll be under, depending on how long you've been doing this and how you operate with it. But the more likely you are to be consistent in your tracking. The less accurate you are, you might be more flexible, but if you are too inaccurate and way too flexible to the point where you're not consistent, that will become a stress and you won't get to your goals. So it is a balancing act. So we're going to talk about how to do that. All right, I would say that probably the best way to go about it that balances these things for most people, I would say, are macro ranges. That means that for your protein, carbohydrates, and fat, you have a range that you can fall in, okay? This means that you're going to be getting pretty damn close to where you need to be and close to whatever macro targets you set up when we were in level 2. Now, if someone is in the midst of contest prep, I would recommend a plus or minus 5 gram range for all 3, just to be pretty damn accurate. That's what I use with my clients. It's not magic, it just ensures a certain level of accuracy. It is a standard. Now, if you are not a bodybuilder contest prep, but you're doing a cut, you could do a 5 gram range for fat and a 10 gram range for protein and carbs, since fat has more calories. Okay? That way you just know that your window's tight enough. Okay? And then as I have guys move on to the off season, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I didn't sneeze, that is so unsatisfying. Sometimes I'll go to 10 gram ranges. Is it going to come or not? Okay. And then sometimes I'll even go as far as 25 gram ranges on carbs and protein and the 10 gram range on fat. After that, I tend to think that the ranges are getting a little too broad, and there might be a better approach if you're not going to track macros, but you still want to be consistent. So, macro ranges. Different from when you're cutting, different from when you're doing contest prep, different when you're bulking. I like plus or minus 5 grams for contest prep, 10 grams for protein, carbs, 5 grams for fat when you're cutting, and then off-season up to 25 gram ranges for protein and carbs and 10 gram for fat. Okay? Now, another option, if macros stress you out more than it's worth it, is to do calories and protein. This is also an option for my guys and gals who have been tracking for so long, or are competitors, that their natural tendencies will get them in the right appropriate proportions of their diet being from carbohydrate and fat for them, because they've been doing it for a while. So for example, I right now have a calorie range and a protein minimum target, as those are going to be some of the big things that are going to ensure I'm in the ballpark of where I need to be, and that my energy balance is taken care of and my weight loss is going the way it needs to be, because I tend to eat the same proportion of carbohydrates and fat. So right now, for example, I give myself between 2,900 and 3,100 calories a day, roughly, and I will make sure at least to hit 2 times my body weight in kilograms in protein. That's kind of my target. So that's what I do. 2 grams per kg of protein, roughly 3,000 calories with a 100 calorie plus or minus window. And you can do the same thing. This is great if you're not willing to, or if it's too stressful to track macros, or if you're really used to
eating similar foods and you know how to get to your ranges, you can take a similar approach. So I would just say, give yourself anywhere between, so for back to pounds, use the minimum end of the macronutrient protein intake that I suggested, whether you're bulking or cutting, and then your calorie target, plus or minus 100 to maybe 150 calories, okay? That can be a good way to do it, calories and protein. It's certainly better than not tracking at all, and it can work very well, and it's sometimes a very good off-season transition, okay? Next thing is eating out. How do we do that? I would say during contest prep, it's something you want to avoid. The times I would suggest you would eat out during contest prep are when you have something that is very important in your life. Like, for example, in 2011, I dieted from January to August, and I ate out, I think, 3 times. For my anniversary with my wife, for Mother's Day, and for my mom's birthday. And those times, I went out and I got a very simple meal. I had double steamed broccoli and a sirloin steak from Outback cooked with no butter and steamed broccoli, no butter as well. So I knew that even if the cooks, because I didn't weigh the food, right? I knew that even if the cooks were off, it was only going to be by, maybe a gram of carbohydrate and 6 grams of protein. So the consequence would be very low. If I ate out and I had, let's say, a pasta dish, that could be off massive amounts. I mean, it's so easy for a chef to put in an extra 2 tablespoons of oil, and then right there you've got, 250 calories, boom, that you didn't plan for. It may not be what the menu says it is. So just remember that chefs and cooks are not going to weigh your food out for you. They don't care about your macros. They care about giving you a tasty meal. So when you eat out, be aware that it's probably going to be inaccurate, and there are ways you can mitigate that. I would say if you're not in contest prep, if you're just doing a cut, 1 to 2 times eaten out per week is fine, and then just make low-calorie option choices. So you can still have that social aspect of your life. If you're in the off-season, I would say 1 to 2 times a week, and just track it. Don't worry about it. You have a larger calorie buffer, and if you're way off, it's just 1 to 2 meals a week. And if you're eating 3 to 5 meals per day, that means you're going to have an average of 28 meals per week. 1 to 2 of them being 50 to 70% accurate is not going to be a big deal, okay? So time and a place for eating out and a way to do it. Lastly is tracking weight. This is one thing that is very important. It's the output. It's making sure we're actually getting to our goal. In energy balance, we talked about losing 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week, or gaining, sometimes only a pound a month, which means you're only putting on 0.2 to 0.3 pounds per week. So how do you measure a 0.2 pound increase in a weekly time period if you only weigh in on Saturdays and it's in very different conditions? So what I recommend, have a daily weigh-in, first thing in the morning, after you use the bathroom, before you eat or drink anything, and just write it down. And it's not that we care about the single day's weigh-in, is that what you're going to do is take an average for the week. So you can set up an Excel spreadsheet, very easy if you have it, and just take 7 cells and hit equals, average, parentheses, and highlight those 7 cells. Or you can just do it longhand, or you can search on the web, average calculator. So there's lots of ways to do it, but just track your weight every day. And if you're savvy with Excel, you can make Excel spit out the average. If you aren't, you can just use the internet to do it. And if you're really bad at the internet, I'm surprised you found the video, but good job. And you can just add all 7 together and divide by 7. Okay? So what you want to do is compare an average weight for the week to the next average. That's going to flatten out all those daily fluctuations. It is totally normal to fluctuate 2, 3, 4, even 5 pounds sometimes, especially after a refeed day, day to day. But what you'll notice is when you get an average, that number is really much more comparable. And if you're consistent, then you can actually see those trends, and you can adjust your diet as needed to make sure you fall within those guidelines for increasing or decreasing your weight. All right. So that is the skinny on accuracy, flexibility, and consistency. Next thing we want to talk about is some of the more intangible aspects of how do we approach this whole thing with a mindset and our lifestyle and behavior. So this is how we do it, right? That's just the how. Now we want to start talking about the why and how we should try to model our brains and think about this. And this is all about staying consistent and actually getting where we want to go. So what we want to avoid is all or nothing thinking. This is a huge short circuit to most people's progress. And 2 of the most common things that I see that cause this are magic macros, and rigid meal plans. So let's go with the rigid meal plan. And this is the reason why I don't write meal plans for my clients, except if I give them an example so they can see just how to do it, is because it's a binary system, meaning either one thing or the other, 0 or 1, that's binary, right? It's either I'm on the meal plan or I'm off. And in our mindsets, that means I've either followed the diet and I was good, or I'm off the diet and I was bad. So a meal plan might say you're going to have an apple at noon, and you go and have a banana, feel like you screwed up, get down on yourself and eat a whole large pizza. The banana might have had the exact same macros as that apple, but because you're focused on either being on or off the meal plan, you feel like you blew it and you go eat a pizza. Okay? So yeah, sometimes people come to me and they go, I want a meal plan. And I get it, it's easy, it's nice, but you can't have a meal plan while you go on vacation. You can't have a meal plan and go out to eat. You can't have a meal plan and not get into these mental traps of not knowing what to do when you're off it. They're not flexible, and they won't get you to a long-term goal. They are a short-term solution. And Americans and the world is great at losing weight. They just can't keep it off. So we need long-term solutions here. So I don't advocate rigid meal plans, okay? Now there's nothing wrong with having meal plans so you can get an idea of how to hit your macros, seeing a couple different examples, trying them out, and then diverging from it and kind of just navigating a little bit, kind of freeballing with hitting your macros, okay? So I would highly recommend, if you do use meal plans, they're a learning tool. They're kind of like your training wheels before you start freestyling and riding without them, okay? And a great website is eatthismuch.com. And it's basically an algorithm where you plug in the calories you want, the number of meals you want to eat, and then you can go in and tell it the actual macros you want to hit, and you hit generate, and it can spit out a meal plan for you, okay? Check it out, Eat This Much. Great training wheels before you start freestyling with your macros. Once you do get to your macros, and you've decided on them in here, it's really important to not put them on a pedestal, okay? They are just numbers. You've decided they work, but remember, it's not like they are the end-all, be-all. They'll probably change over your life as you get older, as you cut, as you bulk, as you experiment and find out what works for you. So if you were supposed to hit between 190 and 210 grams of carbs, and you blew it and ate 215, and then you go eat a pizza, the problem was the pizza, not the 215 grams of carbs that you went 5 grams over your range. So don't put your macros on a pedestal. You're not going to always be 100% accurate. Sometimes you'll mistrack, sometimes you'll mislabel, sometimes you'll look up and realize you just kind of blew it and went over. Just stop there. The macros aren't magic. It's good to be consistent, but don't let the all or nothing thinking be like either I'm on a macros or I'm off, and I might as well just blow it and say screw it. Okay? That's what we want to avoid. The all or nothing thinking eventually leads to binging. Okay? Want to avoid that big time, especially while we're dieting. All right. The next kind of similar mindset to all or nothing is the whole good and bad foods approach. Now this is something that is very prevalent, and many people advocate it. Even smart people advocate it, people with great physiques, people who've got a lot of success. However, I don't see it as a long-term mindset, and I think more often than not, it develops unhealthy relationships with food, which is something we definitely don't want. Okay? We don't want eating disorders just to maintain a healthy physique our whole life. Okay? So I talked about this a little bit in micronutrition, and it's the idea of having an inclusive versus exclusive diet. So kind of the old school mentality in bodybuilding that people used to get shredded, and they got shredded, and they still do, is the whole mindset of clean and dirty foods. You have a list of clean foods that are whole foods, nutritious, healthy. You can eat those, and you have to ignore and stay all fully away from dirty foods, which tend to be high calorie, not nutrient dense, and processed foods. Now, the problem with this is that moderation is totally missing. And we operate in a place of needing that flexibility as humans, so we're not constantly stressed, so we can be social, so we don't have to be social isolationists, right? So we don't want an exclusive diet, okay? We want an inclusive diet. Because truly, are there bad foods? Or are there just bad diets? I can tell you that I can think of probably no foods that are actively harmful to you eating at one time or once every couple months, okay? However, there are empty calorie foods. Like, for example, a Twinkie is not going to hurt you if you eat it. It's just that it doesn't have anything in terms of micronutrition that benefits you. It doesn't have much fiber either. It's lacking things.
And that's only a problem if it dominates your diet and you don't have room because you've met your energy balance or your macronutrition for things like fruits and vegetables and healthy fats and all this stuff. So I would say there are good foods, but there aren't necessarily harmful foods. There are harmful diets, and it's because you're lacking the good foods. So it's not good and bad. It's good and not as good, right? So what you want to make sure you do is you meet your good food requirements, and then after that, feel free to have quote-unquote dirty or bad foods, because that's the way you're flexible in life. That's the way you allow yourself treats, and there's no harm in it, especially if you've met your requirements. You don't get extra credit for eating only healthy foods once you've met your nutrient requirements, okay? There's no food critic on your throat who tells you this is good, this is good, this is bad. There's just your body getting its nutrient needs, and once it gets more than enough, it doesn't use them, okay? So, and another bad thing about having a good food, bad food mindset is that sometimes you can lack one of the most important, critical, key components to a healthy lifestyle and diet, and that's variety. Okinawans, that's the island of Okinawa, Japan, right, are some of the longest living people on the planet, and they happen to have one of the highest food varieties out there. And there are some bodybuilders who want to be this healthy. They're all about health and fitness and all that stuff, and they only eat 10 foods because they have such a short list of what foods are clean. No gluten, no dairy, no red meat, no processed foods, no fruits, all this stuff, and they end up with maybe 10 foods that they've deemed as healthy. But in reality, they're eating a pretty damn unhealthy diet because they're missing out on some aspects of micronutrition, and they have very inactive gut fauna and flora. They can't digest things outside of those foods. While the Okinawans, who eat over 200 foods in their diet, are living way longer and are much healthier. So just an example. And it's not the only reason they live long, but I just wanted to bring it up that variety is an extremely important aspect. And if you go with the good food, bad food model, you're probably going to be missing out there. Okay? So, a couple other things. Let's talk about helping others. Some of the things I've said in this series would challenge some of the conventional wisdom, okay, and some of the old school approaches to it. And when people ask you for help, do it in a way that you're not intentionally challenging convention. I've seen this, I think, a really destructive mindset of it being, if it fits your macros, versus clean and dirty. And what it does is it creates division. We've got all these people that are trying to get healthy, better shape, and the reality is that they've developed these two hardline camps who just throw stones at each other, and neither one learns anything from the other person. And there are flawed philosophies on both sides. Now, you don't have to tell someone else they're stupid to help them, okay? So you want to get condescension out of your voice. You want to get it out of your mindset. And when people ask you what you're doing or say, hey, I thought this, you need to approach them without a defensive or attacking mindset, okay? Just try to explain to them what you're doing and why. And if they want more help, ask them to come to you. What you don't want to do is give out unsolicited advice. You're sitting on the bench press and you hear some guy giving someone else advice, and he's saying, hey, these are the good foods, these are the bad foods. Don't go over there and be like, no, you know, and then interrupt them. That's never going to go well, okay? He's not doing something bad. He's trying to help somebody. And it's more than likely that what they were doing before, which was nothing, is probably worse than actually doing something that is a more old school approach. So the mere fact that they're getting involved is a good thing. So remember that you're on the same team, okay? It's just different mindsets, different approaches. And if you don't corner yourself and put a label on what you're doing and what they're doing, you can actually learn from one another, and we can actually see progress in more areas, okay? So, unsolicited advice, wouldn't want to do that. When you challenge convention, don't challenge convention. Just share your knowledge in a non-emotional, non-attacking, non-confrontational way, okay? Moving on to support. I have something here called family, and this is a catch-all phrase for your wife, your mom, your best friend, your coach, your colleagues, all the people who make up those you care about, who care about you in your life. They can only support you if they understand what you're doing. I've ran into a lot of people who start weighing their foods and losing weight, and maybe they're competing and they're getting really lean, leaner than you would need to for any normal reason besides getting on stage, and they lose the support of their family. And this is not because their family doesn't care about them, it's because their family doesn't understand. So
what I would really suggest for you to do is enlist the aid of those people you care about who care about you, and obtain a support network if you don't have one. This can be online, this can be at a local club, this can be Weight Watchers. There's a lot of ways to do this, but get your support, find your family, and explain to them, this is what I'm doing, this is why it's important to me, and make a request of them, like, I would really appreciate your support in this. It's going to be difficult for these reasons, at these times, and here's what I need, okay? Don't make assumptions about what they know or why they're doing what they're doing. Have good communication with them. Adult communication means stating what you need and telling them why, and then asking for feedback on it and seeing how they feel about it and starting a conversation. So get a support network, communicate with them, ask for what you need, and asking for help is not weak. Anyone who's smart and is honest with themselves and isn't afraid of looking weak, which I think shows true courage, knows they need help in life, okay? So get it, and get it effectively, and get it responsibly and emotionally mature way, okay? Lots of stuff to talk about, as you can see. Finally, I want to talk about alcohol, and this is an easy way to wrap it up, because this is something that should be and can be done in moderation, but that a lot of people have trouble with. So the key with alcohol is moderation. And no matter how popular it is in colleges and on weekends and in certain cultures, drinking until you throw up or until you're totally wasted, or binge drinking or getting drunk every weekend might be a common thing, but it's not healthy. And it's not even normal, I would say. So, moderation with alcohol, what does that mean? It means drinking to the point, and this is my suggestion, in my opinion, drinking to the point where you don't feel it the next day, where it certainly wouldn't hamper your performance the following day, and so that it fits in with your goals. Alcohol has calories, okay? 7 calories per gram, and most of the time it's combined with carbohydrates. It's wine, so it's fruit, or it's hops, so it's got carbohydrates, wheat, barley, all that kind of stuff. So that means it's going to have a combination of calories coming from carbohydrates and alcohol. Now that said, we don't have a fourth macro for alcohol that we follow. So when you decide to drink, what you can do is, look up on the food database the total amount of calories from the alcohol, and then subtract it as you see fit from your macros, probably carbs and fat. So let's say you had a couple beers, you had 400 calories, you could drop 50 grams of carbs, that's 200 calories, and then 20-something grams of fat, and you've got your other 200 calories, and boom, you've still met your number one goal of energy balance, and you've gotten your macros probably pretty close if you were doing moderation. And it won't affect your training the next day, it's all good. Just like eating out, I would probably recommend drinking only once or twice a week, and moderation means probably only 1, 2, maybe 3 drinks if you're a big guy, okay? So, moderation, tracking, and thank you guys so much for following along with this series. I hope it was helpful, and I'll be trying to watch for the questions. And that is it for this series, and look for more videos I'll make in the future on various topics. All right, guys, thanks.